Welcome to Conspiracist.
Great to be here.
Today we're taking a deep dive into a hypothesis that just keeps circulating. The idea that governments have, well, intentionally hidden evidence of something called the Black Knight satellite.
Right, the supposed mysterious object orbiting Earth that pops up a lot.
Exactly. Many listeners probably have some familiarity with the name or the general idea. So our mission for this discussion is really to objectively look at the claims, the reasoning behind this alleged cover-up, using the reports and interpretations that are out there.
And it's interesting when you start unpacking it because the claims seem to build on each other over time. Chronologically layered, you could say.
How so?
Well, some proponents point to accounts that supposedly predate the space age entirely.
Before Sputnik.
Yeah, like a 1954 report. It's attributed to a retired naval officer who apparently detected some kind of unidentified object in orbit.
Okay, 1954. That's definitely pre-Sputnik.
Exactly. So these kinds of early accounts are often used as sort of foundational evidence, suggesting this thing was up there long before we started launching satellites.
Okay, I see. And then there's that 1960 Time magazine piece,
Yeah.
right, that often gets mentioned.
Absolutely. That article talked about the U.S. Navy detecting a dark object. The initial thought or fear was maybe a Soviet spy satellite.
But wasn't that explained later?
It was clarified later that the object was actually debris from a U.S. Air Force Discoverer satellite that had gone astray.
Right.
But here's the interesting part for the conspiracy narrative. Even though there's an official explanation, that initial report of an unknown dark object, it still gets pulled into the Black Knight story as early proof.
So a resolved mystery kind of fuels an ongoing one.
Precisely. It shows how ambiguous events, even ones explained later, can become anchor points for these larger theories.
That makes sense. Did any other early satellite debris get mixed up in this?
Well, there was the Discoverer 8th satellite casing,
Okay.
launched in '59. Its orbit had some similarities, though not identical, to descriptions that later got linked to the Black Knight. So that's another piece that probably added to the early confusion. An identified object, but unusual for its time.
And then there's the astronaut sighting claim. Gordon Cooper.
Ah, yes, Gordon Cooper, during his Mercury 9 mission in 1963.
What's the story there?
The claim is that Cooper saw a UFO and that ground tracking stations actually confirmed it.
An astronaut seeing something, confirmed by ground control. That sounds pretty compelling.
It absolutely does. It adds that element of direct, trained observation.
But I sense a but coming.
Well, the but is that NASA's official records, the mission logs and transcripts, they just don't contain corroborating evidence for that specific event as described in the story.
So it's another case of a compelling anecdote that isn't officially documented.
Right. Which really highlights the challenge here, doesn't it? You're trying to evaluate claims, often anecdotal, sometimes decades old, especially when the core belief involves potential secrecy or cover-ups.
And the idea that this object might predate human launch capability feeds right into that, suggesting something non-human.
Exactly. If it predates us, then it must be other. And if it's other, why would that discovery be kept quiet? That's the logic train.
Okay, let's shift slightly. There's also a connection made to Nikola Tesla, isn't there?
Yes, that's another key thread in the tapestry.
What's the supposed link?
The theory goes that back in the early 1900s, Tesla intercepted some very unusual radio signals.
From his experiments.
From his experiments, yes. And he himself apparently speculated they might be of planetary origin.
Planetary origin. Okay, so people connect that to the Black Knight.
They do. It gets woven in as potential early evidence of this orbiting object communicating, or at least emitting signals, long ago.
But what did Tesla actually say? Is it a direct link?
That's where it gets nuanced. Tesla definitely reported unusual signals. In 1901, he wrote about them, considering an extraterrestrial source as a possibility.
But did he say satellite? Did he mention a Black Knight?
No, not at all. He never identified a specific satellite, certainly not by that name. His conclusion was more general. The signals didn't seem terrestrial.
So linking his work directly to this specific satellite idea is an interpretation made much later.
Exactly. It's a leap. Tesla even clarified misunderstandings in his own time, like denying he'd claimed contact with Mars specifically.
So his signals could have been anything, really. Unknown space stuff.
Could have been. Interpretations range from, genuine belief in interstellar communication attempts to maybe just poorly understood natural phenomena like signals from Jupiter or other atmospheric disturbances we didn't grasp back then.
Okay, so the Tesla connection is more interpretive than direct. Let's move to something more visual. The photograph.
Ah, yes. The 1998 photo from the Space Shuttle mission STS-88.
That's the one everyone points to, isn't it? The proof.
It's certainly the most iconic image associated with the Black Knight theory. It shows this dark, kind of angular or irregular object floating against the backdrop of Earth.
And for believers, this is the Black Knight satellite.
For many, yes, they see it as undeniable visual evidence.
But NASA has an explanation for it, right?
They do. NASA's official assessment is that the object is space debris.
Just junk.
Specifically, they believe it's very likely a thermal blanket that was lost during a spacewalk, an EVA.
A thermal blanket, like insulation foil.
Essentially, yes. Astronauts Jerry Ross and James Newman reported losing one during their work outside the shuttle on that mission. Space debris, covers any man-made object left in orbit that's no longer functional.
Okay, a lost blanket. Is that just NASA saying that, or do others agree?
No, it's not just NASA. James Oberg, who's a well-respected space journalist and historian, has looked into this extensively.
And what's his conclusion?
He supports the thermal blanket explanation. Given that the loss was documented during that specific mission, he finds it the most logical and probable identification for the object in the photo.
So, documented lost item, photo shows an object. Seems straightforward. Yet many people don't buy it. Why the skepticism about the blanket explanation?
Well, I think it comes down to interpretation of the image itself. Some people look at the photo and feel the object looks too solid, too structured, too weird to just be a crumpled piece of blanket floating by.
It doesn't match their mental image of what a lost blanket should look like in space.
Perhaps. Or maybe it aligns better with a pre-existing belief that there is something unusual up there, so they see the photo not as debris, but as confirmation of surveillance, maybe extraterrestrial.
Confirmation bias, potentially.
That's certainly a factor psychologists would point to, yes. Seeing what you expect or want to see.
Okay, so we've touched on early sightings, Tesla, the photo. Let's zoom out to the overall conspiracy theory itself. What's the core belief here?
The absolute core belief is that the Black Knight satellite is real, it's artificial, and it's not ours. It's of extraterrestrial origin.
It's been here a while.
Oh, yes. Some versions of the theory claim he's been orbiting Earth for something like 13,000 years.
13,000 years. Wow. Okay, that raises a lot of questions.
It certainly does. Like, what's its purpose? Who sent it? Why so long ago?
And if it is real and ET, why the alleged government cover-up? What are the main reasons given for that?
Usually it boils down to a couple of key ideas. First, the classic preventing panic argument.
The War of the Worlds scenario.
Sort of. The idea that knowing we're being observed, or have been for millennia, by an alien intelligence could just destabilize society.
Yeah.
Psychologically, religiously, politically.
Okay, that's one reason. What's the other?
Technology. The belief that the satellite might possess incredibly advanced technology.
Technology governments want to study in secret or control.
Both, potentially. Either to gain a strategic military advantage, or perhaps because the tech is so revolutionary, it would completely upend our energy sectors, our economies, everything. So keep it under wraps.
And I've also heard connections made to, like, ancient astronauts or ancient civilizations.
Yes, that's another layer often added. Some theorists look at ancient myths, texts, artwork.
Petroglyphs, carvings.
Exactly. And they interpret certain depictions as evidence that people in the distant past saw this object or similar objects in the sky. Maybe they even interacted with it.
Which would tie into that 13,000-year timeline.
It helps build that narrative of a long hidden history, something ancient watching us.
But there's a counter-argument, right? A more mundane explanation for the whole Black Knight story.
There is a completely different perspective.
Yes.
That the Black Knight isn't one single ancient alien satellite at all. Instead, the idea is that it's a modern myth, essentially cobbled together from several unrelated events.
Like the things we've discussed. The Time magazine report, the Cooper story, the STS-88 photo.
Precisely. A collection of different reports, sightings, maybe misidentifications, each happening independently over decades.
And none of them were originally called Black Knight.
That's a key point in the skeptical view. The actual term Black Knight seems to have been applied much later, retroactively linking these disparate events into one grand narrative.
So it's like connecting dots that weren't originally meant to be connected.
That's the argument. A compounding of separate little mysteries or misunderstood incidents into one big, overarching conspiracy.
Okay, that leads us nicely into the skeptical viewpoints and the alternative explanations. What are the main arguments against the existence of this specific ancient alien satellite?
Well, A major one we've already touched on is the lack of consistent, solid evidence that ties it all together.
The different stories don't quite line up.
Right. The details often conflict. For instance, the supposed orbit of the Black Knight. Descriptions vary. Sometimes it's described as polar, other times retrograde. The estimated size changes depending on the account. The timeline of encounters is fuzzy. There's no single coherent data set.
And you mentioned earlier a polar orbit wouldn't make it easy to photograph from the shuttle, right?
Exactly. A polar orbit is basically north-south, while the shuttle usually orbited closer to the equator, tilted maybe 28 or 50-something degrees. Their paths would only cross very briefly and infrequently. Makes sustained observation or getting multiple clear photos quite difficult.
Okay, so inconsistent details, orbital mechanics issues. What else?
Then there's the whole aspect of human psychology and perception.
Pareidolia. Seeing patterns.
Pareidolia is a big one, yes. Our brains are wired to find familiar patterns like faces or shapes, even in random or ambiguous stimuli. So, seeing a structured object in a photo of space debris like the thermal blanket, that could easily be pareidolia at work.
And confirmation bias again.
Absolutely. If you already believe the Black Knight exists, you're naturally more likely to interpret ambiguous things like odd radio signals or fuzzy photos as proof, while maybe downplaying or dismissing evidence that contradicts it, like the official explanation for the Discoverer debris or the STS-88 object.
You mentioned the Discover 8th casing again earlier as a possible source of early confusion.
Right. That was tracked back in 1959. It was a known piece of U.S. space hardware, but its orbit had some unusual characteristics at the time. It fits the profile for at least one of those early mystery object reports that later got absorbed into the Black Knight legend. It provides a concrete, non-alien explanation for one piece of the puzzle.
So putting it all together, the skeptical take is essentially no government cover-up of an alien ship. Rather, a mix of misidentified space junk, maybe some unexplained radio signals from natural sources, astronaut anecdotes that lack corroboration, and then the human tendency to weave these threads into a compelling story.
That sums up the skeptical viewpoint pretty well, yes. It emphasizes misinterpretation, the power of narrative, and known cognitive biases over an extraordinary claim like a 13,000-year-old alien satellite, especially given the lack of consistent, verifiable physical evidence for that satellite.
It really boils down to the burden of proof, doesn't it? Extraordinary claims requiring extraordinary evidence.
And from the skeptical perspective, that extraordinary evidence for the Black Knight simply hasn't materialized despite decades of claims.
Well, this deep dive has certainly explored the hypothesis of government concealment around the Black Knight satellite. We've looked at the historical claims, the Tesla connection, that iconic photo, the theories, and the counterarguments.
And it's clear there are very different ways to interpret the same events, the same photos, the same anecdotal accounts. The thermal blanket is either just debris or it's proof of ET surveillance. Depends entirely on your framework.
It really does. The narrative itself is powerful, pulling together these disparate elements, unexplained signals, debris, photos, astronaut tales, into something quite captivating.
Especially when you add that potential element of secrecy, of hidden knowledge, that always adds intrigue. The Black Knight story is definitely a fascinating case study in how modern myths can form and persist.
Thanks for listening to Conspiracist.